Welcome back to Next Level Ed Leadership Interview Prep. Before we get to today's research observation, I just want to let you know that we have a new resource. It is a comprehensive list of more than 170 questions and scenarios from superintendent interviews. It also contains the research-based response strategies that help you prepare for your interview. It's completely free. Just go to nextleveledleadership.com and go to the resource page. Let's get to it. Over the last several episodes, we've been building the upgrade formula one research observation at a time. First, we discovered that executive leadership begins with recognizing the constraint. Then we found that school boards aren't simply evaluating the decision. They're evaluating the executive judgment behind the decision. Last episode, we examined the trade-offs, the competing priorities every executive leader must weigh before choosing a path forward. But that left me with another question. Have you ever finished answering a superintendent interview question and thought, I explained the problem, I explained my decision, I even explained why it was difficult. So why didn't my response feel complete? That's exactly what many superintendent candidates experience. They believe once they've explained how they arrived at a decision, their interview response is finished. But what if the board is still waiting for one more piece? What if they still don't know what you actually did to turn your decision into reality? As I continued analyzing superintendent interviews, I noticed something else. The strongest finalists didn't stop after explaining their decision. They explained how that decision became organizational action. Not because the board needed more detail, but because the board was evaluating something deeper. Could this leader actually move an entire district from decision to execution? That observation led to today's research finding. Most candidates prepare for interview questions. School boards are evaluating something else. I'm Jonathan Royce. Through Executive Interview Intelligence, each episode explores the leadership signals, decision-making patterns, and executive behaviors that influence superintendent hiring decisions so you can make your executive leadership visible before the board makes its hiring decision. Recognized as one of the top 10 K-12 podcasts on Podomatic, Executive Interview Intelligence is built on the analysis of more than 170 superintendent interview questions and candidate responses to uncover the hidden executive evaluations taking place throughout the hiring process. We've analyzed those questions and responses, broken them down into their component parts, and created practical tools that save you time, reduce anxiety, and provide a systematic way to prepare for superintendent interviews. That way you can focus on leveling up, accelerate your professional trajectory, and prepare for a future where you're leading a district and improving students' lives. This is Executive Interview Intelligence Research Observation number 87. Executive decisions don't create executive confidence. The implementation of those decisions does. School boards aren't simply evaluating whether you recognize the right problem or made the right decision. They're evaluating whether you can transform your executive thinking into organizational action. Because every superintendent can describe what should happen, executive leaders demonstrate how they made that happen. Let me show you what the research began to reveal. One school board asked a finalist, how would you determine the strengths and capabilities of our key administrative staff? At first glance, that sounds like a question about evaluations. But as I continued analyzing the case study, I realized the board wasn't simply asking how the candidates would assess people. They were asking something much deeper. How do you move from understanding people to leading them? The finalists responded, I want to get to understand and know these individuals. Then continued, our role as a district is to position our talent to get what they need out of our organization and grow with us. That's an excellent beginning. The candidate identifies a constraint. He explains the executive decision to learn before leading. But then notice what happens. The answer moves beyond philosophy, and the candidate explains the action. Listening sessions, learning their goals, understanding their preparation, connecting their purpose to the district's purpose. The committee isn't simply hearing what he believes. They're beginning to see what he would actually do during his first weeks as superintendent. That's what executive action looks like. A different question revealed the same research pattern. The board asked the finalist, what would your first 100 days as a superintendent look like? Most candidates answer that question with a timeline. 30 days, I would do this. Within the next 60 days, I would do that. And then by the 90 days, this would be the result. But one finalist organized the response around action. He explained, "My plan of entry comes in 3 phases," then went on to describe those phases as listening and learning, then followed up by lead and analyze, and finally prepare to take action. Notice the progression. The action wasn't random. Every action flowed directly from the earlier executive decisions. That's what made the response believable. The board could see the executive thinking becoming organizational action. Then another response caught my attention. While discussing communication with the board, the finalist said, "I don't operate based on surprises." Most superintendents might stop there. It's a memorable statement. But this candidate continued on. He immediately explained the actions that would make that philosophy real. He said, "I intend to do that through various modes of contact, including email, text, and phone." He continued, "I plan on putting out a weekly update." Then added on, "having one-on meetings with board members." That's an important distinction. The committee isn't simply hearing a value, they're watching a leadership belief become repeatable executive action. And that's exactly what reduces uncertainty, because school boards aren't hiring the candidate's intentions. They're hiring the candidate's ability to execute. Across these case studies, another research pattern became impossible to ignore. Strong candidates didn't simply explain the constraint or explain the decision or acknowledge the trade-offs. They showed the committee exactly what they did next. It wasn't because the board needed more details. It was because action is where executive leadership becomes observable. Ideas don't change districts. It's ideas plus the executive actions that do. And when candidates consistently reveal the actions that flowed from their executive decisions, school boards no longer have to imagine what that leader might do. They've already seen it through the complete decision chain. Today's research observation changes the way that we think about executive action during superintendent interviews. Strong responses don't stop after explaining this constraint or after explaining the decision. They don't stop after acknowledging the trade-offs. They continue. So as a candidate, you can show the board exactly how your executive judgment became organizational action. Because school boards aren't simply evaluating whether you know what should happen. They're evaluating whether you can make it happen. That's an important distinction. Ideas don't improve districts, implementation does. As I continued analyzing superintendent interview case studies, I noticed something else. The strongest candidates rarely described action as a single event. Their actions built momentum. One conversation led to another. One decision created the conditions for the next. The board wasn't simply hearing about completed tasks checked off one after the other. They were watching an executive leader move an entire organization forward. That's what creates the school board's confidence in an executive leader. Because when a committee can clearly see how you execute, they begin believing you can lead their district through uncertainty, change, and continuous improvement. In our next episode, we'll complete the decision chain upgrade formula by examining the final component, the leadership signal. Because after a school board understands the constraint, the executive decision, the trade-offs, and the actions, there's still one final evaluation taking place. What does this response tell us about the kind of superintendent this person will consistently be? That's the leadership signal. It's the conclusion the board reaches, often without realizing they've reached it. If you're listening on your way to or from work, when you get back to your computer or safely pull over, visit analysis.next-level-ed-leadership-interview-prep.com. The link is in the description. Record one of your superintendent interview responses and discover whether your decision-making is creating executive visibility before the board makes its hiring decision. Because you already know what you're saying, the real question is, what is the board hearing? Until next time, remember, most superintendent candidates prepare for interview questions. School boards are evaluating something else.